Guys, today I'm going to talk about education in Africa. Before I went to Africa, I knew a lot about Africa. I knew it was poor. I knew there was crime, there was violence, there was HIV. But I knew that Africa was a place we send aid, we send things. But I've never heard anything about how it's going to change. I talked to my grandpa about this, and he said, Africa's the same as when I was a kid. You send food, you send medicine. Nothing really changes. Well, the thing that's going to change it is education, and a different kind of education. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Before doing that, I thought it'd be good to know my story. So I grew up just down the road, actually. I went to East Valley High School, graduated in 2001, went to university at the University of Washington, graduated 2005, and basically grew up in a poor background, and just kind of my idea was I need to make it. I need to succeed. I need to get out of my circumstances, and I did, and things were going along well. And I just kind of had this feeling, this gut feeling of I've never really failed at anything, and I've never really put myself out there. I'm on this track, but there's something else I want to do. So I basically, with two friends from the U, quit what I was doing. I was doing consulting, and moved over to Thailand, and we started a small project called Co-Scholar. Basically what we did is we took community leaders from Burma who were already doing good work and basically helped connect them with money to get out and get master's degrees or doctorates and then go back into Burma. And the project was a success, and I really enjoyed it. And through that I met a gentleman who basically offered if I wanted to go to South Africa for 3 months to help set up a scholarship program. And I'd never been to Africa, and I was about to go back to graduate school, and it worked out perfect. And I said, I'd love to. So I went over there, and within about 3 weeks, realized that his idea wasn't going to work. It wasn't resources. His idea was basically we need to find kids and pay for them to go to university, a very common idea. But the problem was that kids from the area weren't graduating. At alarming rates, they were failing. I talked to one gentleman who'd done 8 scholarships, and all 8 students had failed in the first 2 years. Another person had done 7. 6 failed in the first year, and another one was just kind of lingering on in like their 7th year of a 3-year program. And I felt really bad, but I said, I'm sorry, like it's not resources. There needs to be something else. So I had 2 more months. So basically, I just started looking around. I went to all the major universities in basically the country, the 5 biggest ones, and talked to the principals, talked to the schools, and just kind of started asking, what's going on here? Why are kids from rural communities not succeeding? And heard a unified answer, basically, which was critical thinking skills and advanced English skills. So we're getting kids that basically aren't ready for university that are coming in, and we're failing them right out of the system. I was very fortunate. When I first moved there, I lived at an orphanage. Not fortunate in it was a horrible place to live, but it was fortunate in that it gave me I was absolutely inundated with young people. I mean, they like every night outside my door there was a line of kids who wanted help with their homework, or more notably wanted me to do their homework for them. And so, I helped out how I could, but there was one kid who was just so much different. His name was Temba, and he wanted to learn. He would finish his exams, and when everybody else was done with school, he'd bring in his exams, and, we'd go over them together. And, he wanted to know what, not just like the answer was a covalent bond, he wanted to know what that meant and how that applied in the world. And it really struck me that this kid, there was something in him that was being completely not fostered. And this is a kid that could make a real difference. So I said, instead of giving one scholarship, why don't we interject earlier, take some of these kids in 9th grade and actually build up some of the skills. So that was where the idea was born. We took in 5 kids in a pilot group, and that was our classroom. It was outside of a women's crisis center, me and 5 kids sitting outside under a tree. And that was going along, and then in December, the person whose company sent me down there, they pulled out. Their business broke up. And so it was me and 5 kids, and we just kind of had a heart-to-heart meeting, and it said, what do you guys want to do? I mean, I don't have any money. I don't really know how to raise money. I mean, we have this idea, and we just kind of said we'd give it a go. And that was 3 years ago. So before I go into what Imagine Scholars become, I thought it'd be good to know a little bit more about the area. South Africa is a truly fascinating country. I mean, it has incredible advantages. It's the #1 producer of diamonds in the world, #1 producer of platinum, #2 producer of gold in the world, #3 producer of coal, huge timber, huge agriculture. It provides 2/3 of all the power in Africa. I mean, it's an incredibly resource-rich area. It also has an actual university system. It has a Western economy that should be thriving, which it's not, though. I mean, South Africa has, absolutely, just so many challenges. It's become synonymous with corruption. It is one of the top 10 nations in income inequality, and it has 25% unemployment, which, again, South Africa is set up on a very similar structure to what we have. 25% unemployment means the same thing 25% unemployment would mean here. Where I live is up in the northeast corner, right up north of Swaziland and to the west of Mozambique. The area is called the Nkamazi. It's a really interesting area. It was a really big area for resettlement. So during apartheid, they moved a lot of people out of the major city centers, a lot of the areas that they wanted to farm, and they left them in certain areas, like the region we're in now. Basically, it's a huge population center without really infrastructure. It's kind of like a rural ghetto. The thing that, the stats that really stick out on it is unemployment. Our area has, 85% unemployment is what they estimate. And again, this isn't Rwanda. Like this, like a lot of Africa, there's not employment structures. So you have hunter and gather. You have agricultural areas set up. This is exactly what 85% unemployment means in a Western economy. I mean, it just breaks down the entire fiber of everything that's going on there. The big stat, though, the stat that the area is known for is HIV. The recent estimates are 47% of people in the area are infected with HIV. It's the second highest rate in the world. And that stat is, I've heard that stat, I've said that stat 1,000 times. It's almost impossible to really understand what that means on the ground. It means that every single person has a parent, an uncle, a son, a daughter themselves who are infected with HIV. The thing that it's done to this area, though, that's even worse is it's just broke down hope. Nobody really sees a vehicle to get out of this situation. I worked in rural Thailand, and it had a lot of the similar problems. It had HIV, it had poverty, but there was a certain sense that if this kid works hard, he can get out of here, and that's just been completely broken down in the area. So education should be one of the solutions, but the reality is it really is one of the problems. The standard education, they have public schools, K through 12. The average class is about 60 students. You have 20, 30 desks. You have 2 or 3 students per desk, and you have a teacher who basically gets up in front of the board and writes out the day's lessons out of a textbook. The kids write it down, and they say it back, and that's education. And it's an entirely rote system. So what we have is a first world university system, and then we have very much third world school system. Basically, our kids compete against private schools. All wealthy black and white students go to private schools. That's basically the standard. So they go to schools every bit as nice as anything we have here, every bit as nice as our private schools, and then our students try to compete in that frame. And the reality is the universities say, well, we're just getting kids who aren't being prepared, and they just flush them right back out the system. The problem in South Africa is after apartheid, there was a big push of opportunity. We need opportunity. Blacks have not been given the opportunity. The reality is, though, you can create opportunity, but they haven't created an opportunity to actually succeed. One professor I met with, I think, said it very eloquently. He said, there's a certain arrogance that when we took over that we could just jump right up to the very top. And he said the unfortunate thing is the kids are being dragged behind on this. They're not being given the actual structures to succeed. So you have this university system that keeps trying to want to push up into being relevant internationally, and a school system that keeps going down. And the real victim is the students that are just trying to make this enormous gap in between there. So what is Imagine Scholar? Imagine Scholar was an idea that was basically born without coming with an answer. I didn't go to South Africa with an idea that I had the answer in education. It was really a humble approach of just saying, I'm willing to put in the time, I'm willing to listen. My background's in business, and I think I took a little bit of that approach of, what's the problem, and let's figure it out. Let's listen to the parties that are actually stakeholders. Let's listen to the teachers, the parents, the students, and most importantly, the students. So what the program's become is it's an 8-year commitment. basically we take students in ninth grade, and we work with them for 4 years of very, very intensive after-school mentorship. So they go to normal schools, and then they come to us for about 8 hours a week. We then help set them up with a gap year where basically we put them in some kind of professional or volunteer situation where they get a chance to get some experience and kind of see who they want to be, what they want to do. I mean, I think I was somewhat of a victim of just this train of just like, you just need to succeed. And I didn't really think, well, what does that mean to me? What do I want to do? And then we help support them through university. The students are selected based on 3 criteria, and the first is merit. The first thing we look for is all these kids are top students. I mean, we have a pretty large pool. We take 10 kids per year. So it's a very, very small, very concentrated group, and we had 70 schools we take from. So, I mean, these kids are, they all are top students in their schools. If these are the kids that in the U.S. don't fall through the cracks. Oftentimes I get asked, why do we work in Africa? There's lots of needs here, and it's a very good question. The big thing that sticks out to me is that kids like this don't get left out in the U.S. If you go to school in Mattawa, you go to school in Harlem, you go to school in South Central L.A., if you're this kind of kid, there's programs to find you every one of those places. These kids are Ivy League kids. These are the kids that will find a way to get out of their circumstances. That isn't here. They were the only education program in a 100-mile radius. The other thing is financial need. All of our students come from very challenged backgrounds. Half of them are orphans. All of them come from extreme poverty. We didn't add that because we wanted to find the neediest kid or we wanted to find the most hard luck story. It was really added with the idea that if you can be the top student in your entire school and you're an orphan, it just shows you have a little something extra. It shows you already have grit. You've already overcome obstacles. And the idea is that this is a program to build leaders. It's not it's a very micro program with, we have 25 students. But the idea is that these 25 students become catalysts for change. And I mean, those overcoming challenges, like I said, some of these kids have been through hardships that I have never experienced. And the fact that they've continued to thrive is just, it's amazing. The final thing is the ability to work hard. I mean, we don't give them anything. I think a lot of times Africa is a handout. It's the Western world dropping stuff off and saying here, and it's very unempowering. It's basically saying you can't take care of yourself. Your schools are broken. Your business models are broken. We know what's best. Do this, and you'll be good. Here's some handouts of stuff we don't need. The idea is that it isn't a handout. We don't offer them anything. All we offer them is hard work. Here's a bunch of extra work. Here's a bunch of things you need to do outside of your normal schoolwork. And the thing is, it's really, the kids have really taken ownership. The program is run by the kids. So the students select the new students. So when we go into the next year, basically we have our first 5 kids picked the next 10 kids. They select all the rules. They set all the standards. So whenever someone doesn't reach up to the level they've set, it's their rules, it's their standards. Okay. So the program originally, the idea was 2 things. There was 2 basic pillars that we wanted to build the program around. The first was critical thinking. The idea being that when you learn in an entirely rote fashion, all education becomes is this, basically it's teacher writes a thing, you say it again. It's about remembering a fact that's already been asked. But it's not about asking questions. They're not allowed to ask questions. But the reality is as South Africa, as Africa tries to transition into the 21st century, you need 21st century skills. And nobody at their job, their job is here's 10 facts, remember these and come tell me them in a little bit. I mean, it's not the skills. What they need is the ability to, use abstract reasoning, use lateral thinking, and to ask questions, to figure things out for themselves. We do a service project 2 per year. But the service project is we leave them with a blank piece of paper and we say, what's the needs? What resources do you have? What can you do? And they build the project entirely on their own. And it's a great learning experience, but also the service projects we get are so much more genuine. You can get, kids can go volunteer time, but volunteering their mind, volunteering their passions. The last 2 they've done, the first one was they did a panel discussion of community leaders who have made it. The basic problem they found was people aren't optimistic. Nobody believes you can get out of this. So they found 5 people who had made it. They brought in people from around the schools, and they had a panel discussion, and they took that back out to the schools. I mean, that was completely their idea, and it worked wonderfully. It was a really great project, but I could have came up with the idea, but the thing that was beautiful was the planning of that they actually made this happen themselves. The other thing the schools identified was an academic fluency in English. All of our kids speak English. Schools are in English. They're good English communicators, but the first year I tutored a 12th grade student, and I think he was a smart kid, and I thought I'd do really well. And he went off to university, and you realize, and I think a lot of high school students in the U.S. have this also, like the gap between being able to write and speak English and then being academically fluent and being able to write at a university level is pretty big. And coming from rural Africa, it's exceptionally big. So we put a huge focus on reading, writing. Our kids are required to read 2 books per month. And I think the average student last year read 30 or 31 books. And these are real books. I mean, a lot of these kids, the girl on the right, or on the left, I guess, Clara, she's in the blue dress. She comes from a rural village in Mwazini, and she had basically never read a book. She'd read a few things around the house. Last year, she read 56 books, 56 novels, and her writing went from basically about grade, 5th grade level to grade level in 1 year, and it was just completely immersing herself in language, and liking it and enjoying it and falling in love with reading. So that's what the program was supposed to be. When I thought about the idea of it, it's like, well, that's what you need. You need skills. Kids need skills, and then they'll be successful. But about 6 months in, it became very apparent that isn't really what you need. You don't need... Skills are important, but there's a certain underlying factor that I think became more apparent. And as I started to watch students flourish, it became apparent that the thing you really need is character. Successful people have character. They have skills, but skills are often a byproduct. Having a strong character, allows you to, one, acquire skills, but also allows you to utilize those skills effectively. In the program, we have basically 8 character traits. We have zest, grit, personal accountability, self-control, optimism, curiosity, social intelligence, and gratitude. I think this is the first time I've ever not forgot one of those. But the idea is gratitude, it's not saying thank you. You can teach someone to rotely memorize to say thank you. This is the situation, you say thank you, you say it. It's to think about what are you grateful for? What in the past has helped you? What has actually made you, what has taken you to where you are? Personal accountability is not saying I'm sorry. It's saying that, I'm late for class. The taxi wasn't there when I showed up, but it's my responsibility. I could have went to an earlier taxi, and that doesn't exist in our community, and it doesn't exist in a lot of places. It doesn't exist in a lot of people I know. The idea that these traits, and you can know what the words are, but what does it actually mean, and get them to actually embody these things. And I've been incredibly proud to watch these kids really take ownership of this and become, the people who also, they police themselves, but also really live by the standards. And not every student happens at the same time, but when a student really gets it, and I'm sure if you have children or if you work with people, you see when somebody really gets it, it's amazing. They become such a conduit for doing, and these kids have become such leaders. I mean, I have a couple of the kids who can run class by themselves. I mean, the model's always been one of these kids will eventually take my job and do a much better job than I do. And they've already, I have 17-year-olds who are some of the most responsible people I've ever worked with. Before I came here, I asked the kids, I said, what do you guys think this program is? And the thing they said just over and over and over is it's a family. It's a family. It's a place you can come, you can feel safe, you can feel loved, and you can feel like it's okay to be different. It's okay to actually have hopes, actually have dreams, actually open up your horizon, above a situation that basically saying you're going to fail. This was really well demonstrated. We do HIV testing. And so the older students put on a program for the younger students, and it was beautiful, and they did it all themselves. We sat outside, and it was terrifying, though. I mean, it's basically I have all these kids sitting there, and they're going into tests one at a time, and nobody tests. I mean, if you're HIV positive, your parents don't want to know about it. You're shunned. It's a society where 47% of people have HIV. I've never met someone who said they're HIV positive, and to watch these kids grab each other by the hand and walk in and test. And the reality was, positive, negative with a test, they were there for each other, and they've really lived by that. And that was just incredibly beautiful to me to be part of, because teenagers are horrible, horrible people. I mean, they're awful to each other. I was one, and I was horrible. I mean, I look back at myself, and to actually see people who are not only smart, not only doing well in school, not only getting good grades, but are actually good people. And it's not that we're making them good people. We're just giving them a platform where we're saying, you know, it's also important to think about, what do you think about being a person? What effects or what legacy do you want to leave on the world? And giving them a chance to think about that when they're 14 instead of when they're 26, which is when I started to think about it. To me, though, this program it's not, we have great curriculum, and we've had great educators, and we've been very fortunate to build a program that I'm very proud of. I mean, it's grown a lot. You know, we have 3 full-time staff members, we have an education center. I mean, it's become something very tangible and very real, and I'm proud of it. But to me, the program is still, you know, it's 25 kids, 25 individuals, 25 kids that we have fully invested in, that we have basically said that we are there for you. Whatever you need, we're here to support you. And we've opened up, you know, there's nothing, the student on this board there, her name's Promise, and she is just such like a quintessential example of what this program is. When she came into her interview, I got her application, and it was really good. She had excellent marks. She wanted to be a doctor, and she had beautiful essays, and she really needed the help. I mean, you could tell just in her writing and the things she was willing to talk about to a stranger on a piece of paper, she could really use help. And she came in, and this was the first year, and it was just me. So it was me, this weird white guy, and her sitting in a room. And she was incredibly nervous. She could barely speak. And the whole interview, I'm trying to get something out of her because I want her to be right for the program. And she just can't say anything. And finally at the end I said, you know, Promise, is there anything else you want to say? And she just kind of shakes her head. And I said, you know, are you sure? And she looks up, and she's so little. I mean, she's 4'10", and she's just like, you know, I'm real shy, but if you give me a chance, I'll make you real proud. And she has, in just every possible way. I mean, she went from, you know, this little shy, beat-down girl who had every reason to give up. I mean, had been abused in every way a young woman can be abused. And to watch her go from writing, I want to be a doctor on a piece of paper, to 3 years later, believing that she can be a doctor, is the thing that I'm more proud of than anything in the world. And, you know, she had, like I said, I mean, when I look at myself along the way, like, I got a few opportunities, and a few people believed in me, and that's what I kind of look at my role in this is just to give her an opportunity to say that, yeah, like, there are people out there that do believe in you, that are here for you. And it's just been amazing to watch her grow. So this program was started, I mean, with nothing, and we've basically kind of built the program up with, you know, with nothing. And so the one thing I want to ask is, you know, if anybody in here is looking for a program that they want to get behind, that they would like, you know, if they want to be part of something that people would really appreciate, I would definitely appreciate it. I mean, there's a sign-up sheet on all the tables. It's under the flyer. We have a flyer on the table. If you'd like to know more information, I also left myself, I think, a little bit of time to answer questions, because I always forget like 30 important things. But if you're interested at all, please sign up. This isn't a big program. It's small budget, very grassroots, but it's making a real difference. And it's, I think, something that people who have been involved with it, Kevin Phillips has been a sponsor for a while. You can talk to him. I mean, it's something that I think you realize that what you're doing isn't just a drop in a bucket. It's everything for one kid. So thank you guys. I thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. This is so deeply appreciated. So thank you. Yeah, if anyone has questions.
Yeah, maybe you said it, but I kind of, maybe you could go back over it. What happens to this kind of student without your program?
Yeah, so basically what we have, there's two things I would answer that with, is these kind of students are still not succeeding at university because the school system is basically prepping them in a way that's not really building up the skills. So, I mean, there's a huge attrition rate. And then there also is just the fact of when you come from an orphan background, even if you're a smart kid, you just don't, I don't think many, like a lot of our kids have said, they never really thought that university was even an option. I mean, you don't have any of the resources, but you also just don't have the emotional backing to go for it. So I mean, you know, this is still, we have our oldest students are going into their senior year right now, and I mean, we're prepping very hard. You know, a lot of it is early on is very much building up leadership potential, and now the last 2 years are a lot more academics, like we want them to be ready for university. But I mean, you know, my answer to that question would be, they can fall off the track a lot of different ways. And I mean, the graduation rate of kids from our area that get into university is 5%. And those are the kids that get in and start university. 5% graduate. There's a white private school down the road that has 99% graduation rate. And it just kind of shows you these, you know, they throw a bunch of kids at university, white or wealthy black kids succeed, you know, poor kids drop off, and it's just kind of accepted.
Do you have access to computers?
Yeah, we actually, a Rotarian from one of the clubs in Bellevue donated, I think we have 12 now, and then he just donated 10 more. So, but we're always looking for more. We would love to be able to offer each student access to a computer individually instead of just at the center. But we just got wireless internet too, which is truly a miraculous feat because we're very rural. So we just got wireless internet 3 months ago. So the whole world has kind of opened up to us on computers.
Is there a spiritual side to your program?
There's not technically. I mean, we're a non-denominational program, but I mean, our students are all. I mean, it's entirely 25 Christian students, and we talk a lot about critical thinking and them making ownership of their own ideals, and so their faith comes into a lot of it, and we're very supportive. I mean, I think the idea is what I really want is for them to take their faith and use it as a vehicle to really do something good with it. And kind of, we tie it a lot in with the service project of, here's an ideal that everybody has in this community. Here's the reality of this community. How can you take your ideals, your faith, and use it as a positive? Cool. Thank you, guys.